Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. David Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new teen therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. David is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hello, Rhonda.
Hello, David. We're laughing because the most incredible, wonderful Dave Fribush is with us again, and he's giving us the notification of when we should start recording. And for some reason, that's funny. I don't know.
It's awesome. It's like we have
awesome.
a technical person.
Yeah, we have a producer here.
Yeah.
Making you guys very professional.
Yeah. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, we're going to start off with episode 158 is on changing the focus, and we're going to start it off with an email from a listener who writes, "Hi, David. Just thought of asking this question to you on this scenario. You may address in your relevant podcast if it's suitable. I have often seen that estranged friends or family members do not talk or resolve a trivial conflict for years because one or both of them have ego issues or have fear of rejection. This problem of unfairness may even exist between a demanding parent and the child, ranging from secretly resenting to not talking at all. They might come face to face in family occasions or professional settings in case of friendship and bear the discomfort but not attempt to reconcile. They might be suffering deep down emotionally, but they refuse to accept that it matters. One or both members might feel they have been treated unfairly and expect apologies, but both parties are scared to even make the move for the fear of being hurt again or rejected. On a personal level, I have faced such unfairness with a close friend. I see even if you forgive the other party, still that element of resentment is there somewhere. How do you know you have truly forgiven someone and moved on? What's the best that can be done at an individual level without involving the other party, at least until the time both are ready to talk it out, if that ever happens? Once again, I want to thank you for all the selfless work you do for people through your knowledge sharing. My sincere best wishes to you and great thanks. Thanks, Rajesh.
Rajesh. Yeah, Rajesh, or Rajesh, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, is actually written in a lot of questions. Many of them we've answered, and they've all been really, really great questions. It's fun to have fans who stick with you, and you get into kind of dialogue, and it makes the whole thing a lot more fun in my mind. I thought this would be a good springboard for a session on changing the focus. We had that in our Tuesday group for the Stanford training group, how you'd use this technique, changing the focus in your work with patients. And it was actually one of the highest rated training groups we've had for a long time. But it's a technique that the general public can use as well. And so I've written 2 memos about changing the focus. It's one of the 3 advanced secrets of effective communication. And if you go to my website, feelinggood.com, and click on the Feeling Good podcast, then you can get the show notes to all of the episodes, and I put a lot of effort into them, and so does Rhonda, to make the whole experience richer and a better training thing for you. But let's talk about first what changing the focus is, and then we can show how it applies here. We can talk about how you would use it in therapy. And you gave a great therapy example. You have a good personal example. See if we can bring this to light for people. So what is changing the focus, Rhonda?
Changing the focus is when you notice there's tension in a relationship that you have with someone, and you pause and you ask them if it's okay and to talk about the tension that you're experiencing. And then instead of talking about what you're talking about, you talk about what your thoughts and feelings are about the experience of what is going on between the two of you. And you take responsibility for it and have a dialogue between you and hopefully get to a resolution of it.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm sure you could explain it better. I'm
no,
terrible at this technique.
I thought that was really clear and really, really nice. And I would say that it's everything I teach can be screwed up for a bad outcome or used skillfully for a fantastic outcome. And this is one of the more difficult techniques, both for the general public and even for mental health professionals. And this year was the first year that we really did a decent job, I think, of teaching it to the people who came to the Tuesday group, because they started to get it for the first time and be able to do it. And
can I say that on episode 126, there's you talked about 3 different techniques, and one of them is changing the focus. So people might want to start listening to that for a brief introduction to this. And the other thing that you had mentioned before we started is that to do change the focus, it's really important to do really well, to understand the 5 secrets of effective communication really well.
Yeah, you've got to be expert at them, or you can't just, if you try to use this technique without them, it's not going to be effective at all. You're going to create hurt feelings and more conflict.
And then while we were talking about it, Dave was talking about his experience with 5 secrets. So I was wondering, Dave, if you could repeat that here.
Yeah, well, I had a kind of ongoing difficult conversational dynamic with someone I've been in a long time relationship with, and it took me a long time to get the hang of the 5 secrets, and David kept really pushing me, and it, I'd say that the key thing was really accepting that the other person is right. If you really can completely accept that was sort of the starting point that led to the effective use of the 5 secrets. And then, since then, this person and I have had some conversations that are well beyond what we ever had before. And one thing I was mentioning before we started recording was that not every conversation since we had those first good conversations has been good. But what has changed is it's kind of shifted the whole conversational dynamic to a point that I find that, like, even when we start going off the rails a little bit, like, it gets pulled back much quicker in terms of because there's somehow we've built up like an understanding that, that probably came across in a way that he didn't really mean or she didn't really mean. And so I've noticed that it's helped us reset as well, even in a conversation that's not going great. It's really helped. So it's been, empirically, I can say that it has had a remarkable effect.
Well, you said a lot of important things there. One, you said to agree with the other person, which of course is the disarming technique, and that's the most important of the 5 secrets of effective communication by far. It's also by far the hardest one to learn, not only because it can be technically difficult to see the truth and what someone is telling you, because we all react defensively and try to insist they're wrong, but we also have an emotional commitment to defending ourselves and not seeing the truth and what the other person is saying. Can you flesh that out a little bit for us? Because I know you fought against it for a long time, but before you began to use the 5 secrets.
Yeah, because I was right and the other person was wrong, right? Or I was wronged by the other person. It was all there was definitely a strong resistance to it, and I think that's why when my early attempts failed, and I would get called out sometimes. You're trying the David Burns bullshit with me, right?
Yeah.
That was. And that's tough, because right then that's when you're actually really trying, you're failing, and then you're getting called out on it, and that's almost the worse. But it's not until it's humility. It's really accepting that the other person's point of view is completely right. Just trying it on, and when you finally can see it that way, sort of through that other person's eyes. I find that it gave me insight into how I was being in a way that I didn't have before.
Yeah. Does that involve the death of the ego, the death of the self?
I think that it certainly, whether it's the self or the ego, it involves the death of that protectiveness, that separation between yourself and
that's right,
and the other person.
That's right, and we don't want to die. We cling to life, and so we keep suffering.
Yeah.
And when you finally allow yourself to see the truth and what the other person is saying, you die, but then you go to heaven right away because you're close to that other person and you don't have any territory to defend.
Yeah. I would just add one thing that what I think got me over the edge, in addition to all the urging and support from you and from the other folks in the hiking community, was trying it out, practicing with somebody else. I think it helps if it's
Miriam, one of our hikers.
With Miriam, exactly. Yes. I think it probably helps if the person is the same gender, especially if it's there's any kind of male, female, or former or existing romantic relationship. But I don't know if that's necessarily important. But trying it out with someone and seeing, are you doing a good job? And also what is their, like, getting their honest feedback about how they're reacting and how they're perceiving what you're saying was really valuable.
Practicing with someone who's not the one you're intimately involved
exactly.
with, who can give you good feedback and let you know, hey, that doesn't come across so well right now, what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I don't want to probe too deeply, but I don't know if you can give an example of something that you hadn't been agreeing with, and then suddenly you decided you could agree with it, and that dramatically shifted the dynamic of this really important relationship in your life.
I think that one thing was, so something that had come up with this person was, she had raised some questions about like money and some she'd raised some questions around money, and I knew that money wasn't really that what it was about, but I got that it was about she wasn't feeling appreciated.
Yeah, right.
And so I think like really acknowledging that accepting that, I haven't really appreciated all the amazing things that she's done in certain in certain areas that are really important, and I've focused on the things where I felt I was upset by, but there was a lot to be appreciative of, and that she was completely justified in feeling unappreciated and even hurt. And even if she wasn't justified, she did feel that way. And so what difference does it make whether it's justified? Like, you obviously don't want the person you're in this relationship with to be having those feelings. And so I think that I really feel like that was a major turning point in a way, was like my humility around appreciation.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm just so proud of what you did and the way you did it. Because it was only 3 years of stubbornness leading up to that.
Wondering if you're going to say that.
But it's with all of us. We don't want to die. We want to cling to our defensiveness. But it's just really awesome.
And I love how you said that, because we had been talking about listening to the music behind people's statements and bringing that out in the disarm. And she was talking about money, and you heard her saying, with the music behind that, was being underappreciated. And once you could pull that
I feel
out.
hurt. I don't feel valued.
Yeah, you don't feel valued.
I feel like, kind of used and not loved. And I really want to feel loved. I want to feel cared about.
Yeah.
And then once you hear that, it just shifts it into a whole other dimension. And another point, I think, that's always important is the whole issue of outcome resistance. You have to want to get close to this person, as well as being willing to pay the price, the death of the self, in order to do it. And that's the key behind changing the focus as well. It's only going to work if you're skillful with the 5 secrets, and in addition, if you really want to get close to the person. Now, to take the example, and then we'll take your example here in a second, but this fellow wrote, and maybe I can borrow that statement, that he's got some people, it looks like, in his family system, and there's some. You're smiling. Did I say something stupid?
I'm smiling at Dave because I was so brave of him to talk about that.
Oh yeah. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. But some people in his family system who he's angry with, or they're angry with him, and everyone's keeping it as a secret. And so I think we could give an example of how to use changing the focus. The details would depend on the actual details here. We don't know who the people are and what the issues are. But he could say something like this. Let's say there's a fellow named Brad who he's in his family, and that was my computer making a sound, by the way, if any of you heard that. And the high-tech people would edit it out. We just flow with it. But our life is not that perfect in the Burns myriad of studios. But at any rate, he might say, like, Brad, you know, could I talk to you for a minute, Brad? You know, I see you a lot. When we get together, the families. And it just I'm aware, and I think you're aware too, that there's been some tension between the two of us, and we don't talk about it, and it's been going on for a lot of years, and I've been feeling kind of upset and angry and hurt and also sad, because to tell you the truth, I've always really liked you and admired you. And when we were young and we used to hang out, it was just so much fun. And I realized I've kind of lost you as a friend. And I was thinking maybe if we were to talk about some of those hard feelings and kind of listen and respect each other and try to understand each other, we could then maybe develop a really cool relationship again. But I just wanted to know, you know, if you've noticed that too, a kind of tension, and that we're both kind of holding back on a lot of emotions and stuff, and kind of trying to ignore each other. What have you noticed that, and what's it been like for you, Brad? How's that?
That sounds pretty good to me.
What do you think?
Great. Yeah.
Why would it be good? What were the elements?
Well, there was zero blame. You took responsibility. You talked about what you noticed, that we haven't been talking to each other, and then you asked him what his experience, if he had noticed it, and what his experience. Then you asked him to go into his experience.
Right, but also I stroked a lot, and I wanted him to know that I had high regard for him, because without that you can't make this work.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah. It's interesting. I didn't hear those.
Because otherwise you could say, there's been a lot of tension between the two of us, you ass, or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because of all
Critical
your
thoughts.
insensitivity in the past, and I just want to let you know that I'm still pissed at you. Well, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
And excuse the four-letter words, but I think a lot of people do think in four-letter words sometimes. You have to show some warmth or respect, I think, for the other person, so they'll get motivated as well. Did we make that clear?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it's these types of. I think that the Rajesh, his question, I'm sure, is certainly applicable. Not only in family relationships, but everywhere, where like a small thing that's really nothing ends up becoming a barrier to a good relationship, and that is a technique to move past that. Yeah.
In fact, there's a TV program on these days about feuding neighbors, where they go or these neighbors have been feuding for years, then finally one of them murders the other one. It's on CNN, I think.
Really?
It's called Neighbors or something like that. And it's all these intense hatred feuds that erupt eventually into homicidal violence.
That's terrible. They need to learn this technique.
But again, you have to want to get close to the other person, and it wouldn't be helpful in most of these situations like that, because the people probably don't want to get close. They view the other person as a bad entity. They label them as a loser, a fraud, a horrible human being, and then they want to hurt and destroy, because of those cognitive distortions and how you view the person you're not getting along with. And right. But you had well, first of all, can we do your clinical example, which I thought was brilliant?
Okay. So I had a situation where I accidentally double booked two patients at the same time, and I was really embarrassed and felt really like, oh my God, I need to be more on top of this. And I asked one of them if he would come back another time, and said, I won't charge you for the other time that you come back. And he kind of stormed off. So I realized he was angry. And then when he came back, we talked about.
And you said you offered him a free session, right?
Right. I said he didn't have to pay me for the next session.
Yeah.
And so when he came back, we talked about what happened, and I felt, I thought I did find enough 5 secrets. But then I also asked him, well, have you ever experienced this before? I know I really let you down. Have you experienced other times when you felt let down by someone? And that just opened a floodgate of him describing all of the times when he's felt let down by many people. And we had an incredible session. And, I think by the end he felt a lot of relief. And even though it was a huge mistake on my part, it led to huge, communication between the two of us and learning on his part and mine too.
And I think that's one of the reasons, and that was beautiful what you did. And by the way, I put your contact info if anyone would want some of your great therapy.
Thank you.
In depression, anxiety, and then this court stuff you do with warring families, I think is really, really awesome. One of the things Tuesday that we emphasized to the therapists, and you think this is so obvious, every therapist would understand it, but very few therapists can get it and know how to do this, but that your worst therapeutic failure is your greatest success in disguise. Because the problem isn't that you fail with a patient. The patient gets ticked off or vice versa. What was that sound, by the way?
I think the cat's going out for a walk.
Oh, Melanie's letting the cat out or in?
That was just the door.
Maybe the cat's trying to get in. Let's just turn the audio off for just a second. It was more of the local color at the Murrieta Studios. I guess it was my wife coming in out of the garage. I thought it was a poor cat howling at the door and terrified. We love our little kitties. But at any rate, your worst therapeutic failure is your greatest success in disguise. The problem isn't your failure, but you're not noticing it, or you're keep acting it out, playing the same game over and over with the patient. But if you'd stop and notice what's happening, it can transform the therapeutic relationship and bring it much deeper. And it may be a big thing in the patient's life. And I was working with a fellow just recently, but I noticed I was feeling kind of awkward. I was trying real hard in the session, and then when I got the feedback, he gave me low empathy and low helpfulness ratings, and I don't know if I've mentioned this, but the bottom line is I had kind of a sleepless night because I really like him, and yet I've been uncomfortable in my work with him. And then I called him the next day and said, I felt like I really have been letting you down, and tell you the truth, it's been uncomfortable for me in our sessions. I feel like we're not on board together, and like I've been kind of dreading the sessions, because even though I like you, there's something that's not going right, and I just feel like I've been doing a terrible job, and I've been upset about it, and I wanted to share that with you and see if you've been noticing as well. And then he said, this means so much to me, what you're saying right now. And he says, I've been to so many therapists trying to get help, and to tell you the truth, most of them, they were just like frauds or con artists. They're always trying to sell me some package of this or that or whatever. And he says, knowing that you were feeling hurt or upset just means so much to me. He says, I feel so close to you now. And then he started sobbing, and he says, I've been so lonely, and I haven't even been willing to admit it. And then we just had the greatest session, like what you did ever. I mean, it was just amazing. Now I just feel so close to him, and he's just doing amazing work. But what happens there is that you might not want to bring it up with your patient because you feel ashamed. It seems yucky, and you think, oh, if I don't deal with this, it'll go away. And changing the focus means to bring it to conscious awareness, and as you say, Dave, with humility. But it's also very, very exciting because, like, the way I was failing with him, but I was really failing. I mean, it wasn't his fault. I was failing, but that was really a good thing.
Right.
Once we talked about it, and then that once you bring it to conscious awareness, the game cannot continue any longer. The game requires secrecy to have power. But like the game you were playing with your loved one of she resenting you and feeling uncared about, and you ignoring that, and then you're snipping at each other, and that game will go on forever. Each feeling I'm right and the other's wrong. Each I'm a victim and you're the oppressor. And then once you bring it to conscious awareness in a warm, respectful way, the game has lost its power, and there's the opportunity to get close. That's what changing the focus is all about. Now we're going to shrink the shrink. Dave and David.
Okay, I have a real life problem with my sister. And my youngest son is joining the Air Force as an officer, and he's going to officers training in October. And we're having a going away party for him a couple days before he leaves. And we invited my sister and her husband to come. And she said she couldn't come, and she had, in my opinion, not valid, I'll say it this way, not valid excuses. And then she said when my son comes back from his training after 3 months, he'll have a week break. She wants him to drive to where she lives and put all the effort into it.
An hour and a half drive from where you live up in North Bay.
Yeah. And when he told me that story, she's not coming to the party, but I'm going to go visit her when I come back after 3 months, I got really mad and said, "What? I wouldn't have seen you for 3 months." And I was like, "I don't want you to take the time to go visit her. Like, could she put some effort into this?" And so then I thought, well, this could be a really good time for me to do changing the focus. But one of the things you didn't say is that one of the reasons people don't like to bring things to conscious awareness is because we're afraid of anger, both my anger and her anger.
Yeah.
And so I thought I would bring it up and maybe we could talk about it.
Yeah. So why don't we just go for the gold? And I presume you'd like to have a better relationship with your sister?
I would.
So maybe we can just model how you might use changing the focus. And I think I mentioned, but if not, there's a great memo. If you're from the general public, I've written a 4-page thing for you, and if you're a therapist, I've written a 4-page thing for you, and they'll both be linkable from the show notes. So if you go to the podcast, you'll get a lot of extra goodies on my website, feelinggood.com. Go to the Feeling Good podcast tab, and then you can find all the show notes and everything like that, or you can sign up to receive the emails every time we do a podcast. So what might you say to your sister?
I might say, I'll call her Ellen.
Ellen.
Well, I doubt she'll ever listen to this, but just in case she does, I'll call her Ellen. So Ellen, I've noticed a little, do you have a minute to talk about something that's going on between us? And hopefully she'd say, oh yeah, sure. But there is the possibility that she might say no, but just pretend she says yes. And I say, gee, I've noticed a little tension or some, just a tiny bit of conflict between the two of us. And I wanted to talk about it because, you're my sister and I really love you a lot. And we've gone through a lot together. And, you're the aunt to my children and you've always been a really great, caring aunt. And, I know you love your children so much, and I know that you understand how much I love my kids. And that was my stroking. And let's see, what else I say? There's a little bit of conflict between when you're going to visit with my son, Sam, when, because he's going to be leaving for months and months, and I don't know when we're going to see each other again. And instead of you putting any effort into, this is not going well. Instead of you putting any,
You're doing great so far.
Yeah, it's great so far.
here's my failure. Instead of you putting any effort into seeing him before he leaves, you want him to put all the effort
You
in.
just say, instead of you wrongly not putting in any effort, you bum.
Yeah, you're terrible, Aunt. You.
Yeah, instead of trying to take away my time with them.
Yeah. So how are you going to...
How am I going to change that?
Yeah.
Maybe
You've always been
role
a great
reversal.
caring aunt, and I love you a lot. But
I love you a lot, and I know you want to see Sam before he goes away. And could you put more effort into doing that?
well, this is good because it shows it's hard, And,
Yeah, it's
and
really hard.
You're an expert and a
I'm
mental health professional, but I could we say something like, and again, I'm just taking a stab at it, and we'll see what your stab is, Dave. But I've been feeling a little bit hurt.
Oh yeah, that's good.
And I wonder if you're feeling, upset too, maybe a little angry with me, or feeling awkward about the situation. And as an aside, this is the whole point of changing the focus. And I can say this 1,000 times if people don't get it. See, don't try to solve the problem. The attempt to solve the problem is the problem. The solution is to talk about the feeling. See, you got hung up there where you were saying, could you try harder?
Yeah.
Could you do your part, you
Could you
bum,
put more effort into it?
type of thing. But what you want to do, see, under the words that are going back and forth, there's a river of emotion. And when you use changing the focus, you dip down into the river of emotion in a kindly way. I've been feeling kind of hurt, and I wouldn't be surprised if you're feeling a little bit awkward or tense too. Maybe you're feeling I've been putting demands on you, or maybe I haven't been a very good sister, or haven't been attuned to your life recently. But have you noticed that conflict between the two of us? And tell me what it's like for you. How was that?
That was really good.
Mm-hmm. Why?
Because I said that when I was doing that, I didn't say anything about my emotions.
Or hers.
Or hers. I just blamed her.
Yeah, and you're
attacked
trying to
her.
solve the problem, right?
Yeah.
So do the last part again. Or let's see what you think, Dave.
No, exactly what I was thinking was to go to an I feel and talk about
I feel and feeling empathy.
Yeah.
In a loving way, and then with inquiry. And Rhonda will now masterfully demonstrate this.
Okay, so blah, 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 the stroking and all the other stuff. And then say, so Ellen, I've been feeling a little bit hurt and kind of irritated actually. And I'm wondering if you're kind of upset too, because I've noticed the awkwardness between us, and I have put demands on you, and I haven't been really tuned into what you're going through and what your plans are, what your life is, and I'm wondering if you've noticed that too, and if you're upset about that. I'd really love to hear what your experience is and what your thoughts and feelings are. Can you tell me what they are?
I'd give that an A, and I would give it an A plus if you said, "Can you tell me what they are?" Because I really love you, and I really want to feel closer to you, and let's use this as an opportunity to become really good sisters again.
Okay, that's really beautiful.
Yeah, and why is it?
Because it's so genuine and sincere, and and that's the relationship that I want to have with my sister.
Yeah.
Can I make an observation?
Yeah.
So just the way that you said that last little part, like about how much you love her and you want to have a relationship, like there's a tone and warmth in your voice that wasn't fully in the response before had all the right content, but I would say if you can add in that warmth, that would be the A++.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because it's not just the words, it's the feelings and the tone, and yeah, you're right.
And I love what you're saying, and that's the whole thing, and it's so hard for human beings to just be able to treat each other in a caring and kindly way, and to deal with emotions, and the reason you don't have to solve the problem is because when I like both of you, and we like working together in various ways, and so if you told me that you were upset with me, because I screw up in things all the time, and you did it in a really caring way, it would upset me, and I would be strongly motivated if there is a problem to be solved to do my part in solving it. You wouldn't have to try to solve the problem with me. I felt badly the other night that you had to rush off to group and you had to get food on the way. And then it hurt my feelings because I thought, gosh, Rhonda came all the way down, and then I ignored, her, like I'll just go without eating. And then you had to go and get food at a restaurant. And I felt really hurt that I hadn't treated you in a warmer way, or it seemed like really insensitive. But no one had to solve the problem. Like, the refrigerator is filled with stuff I bought before you came today. We got all these salads and all kinds of quiches and soups and stuff like that. If you really develop a loving thing, people will find a way to solve the problem. I'll give one last story, and then we probably gotta cut this off. But I had a patient who had been rejected by her husband, and she eventually filed for divorce and found a really handsome guy, an older guy that she fell in love with, and vice versa. And they decided to get married. He was about 10 or 12 years older than she was. He was this real handsome guy. But he was a divorced minister, and he had 5 children from his previous marriage, and he didn't want any children. He'd had it with children, but she'd never had any children, and she very much wanted to have a child with him when she was still young enough to become pregnant. And they came in for a couples session, and they were arguing back and forth, debating about, who's right and who's wrong. And he had all of his entitlements and she had all of her entitlements. And they're never going to be able to solve that problem. Humans can't solve these kinds of problems. They just argue and fight forever. But I knew they were both very much in love with each other, and they were both really good eggs. And so I gave them the assignment to just do a simple communication exercise where he would talk and then she would summarize what he said. And when she got it 95% right, then she could talk and then he would summarize what she said, and he had to keep doing it until he got it 95% accurate. So just focus on the other person's feelings and the other person's point of view. Give up trying to solve the problem and give up trying to sell your own point of view. And so it was just to get them to be warm and listen rather than arguing. And so they did it, and then they called, I think he called about 3 weeks later and said the oddest thing had happened, that he woke up this morning and suddenly realized he wanted to have a baby too. And so the problem just got solved.
Yeah, that's great.
Once he felt loved and she felt loved and they felt close, then they didn't want to argue anymore. And they had a daughter. And you said I shouldn't tell the whole story, but the daughter was became tremendously important to both of them. You recall the...
I mean, I didn't say that you shouldn't tell the whole story. I just said that she was tremendously important to them just because of who she was as a human being in their life.
Oh, yes, absolutely. But then they had a tragic death of one of his sons, who died in the most horrible imaginable way. Oh. And it was a tremendous loss for them. And then the new baby daughter that they had, it became a tremendous source of comfort for both of them and throughout their lives. But again, that was changing the focus to focus on how we both feel and stop arguing or trying to prove who's right, trying to solve this or that problem. So that's...
And then just to summarize my experience with the two of you and talking about that in this role play, which is I'm going to drive home and call my sister, but it's not so hard to ask to stop and to notice the tension, and it's not so hard to stroke someone, especially if you care about them. But the point that was really difficult was making the I feel statements and the feeling empathy. That was hard for me.
As well as the multiple choice disarming, to just say, maybe you're feeling kind of ticked off at me, Ellen, I guess that's what's calling her, because maybe I haven't been the best sister. And
Yeah.
maybe I haven't been attending to how you're feeling and what's going on in your life. And I'm thinking you should come up here and be all excited about my son going into the Air Force and everything like that. And I want to listen and hear. How are you doing?
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah, that was really great.
Yeah. One observation, another one would be that for listeners that are working on this technique themselves is, here we have a highly trained professional in this, and it's when it's your own conflict, your own conflict relationship, it's really hard, no matter how, so I think
Exactly.
I think it's humbling to try it, but it's also helpful in a way to see that it doesn't roll off the tongue, and I could see the resistance you had to doing it, so it's great to witness that.
And that is so 200% true, what you're saying. The resistance we all have is just incredible. The techniques look simple on paper, but they're very, very challenging. Yeah. And only listeners who really are committed are going to learn how to do it. And I guess I can put in a commercial for my book, Feeling Good Together, which you can get on Amazon. You can click to it from the books page on my website. You click on it, it'll bring you right to Amazon. It's a paperback. It's not expensive, but if you read it and do the written exercises, that will be a huge step in learning the 5 secrets of effective communication, as well as advanced techniques like changing the focus.
Well, great. This was a really great podcast episode, and let's talk about your workshops coming up.
Quickly, in November 4 to 7, 2019, I'm doing a 4-day intensive in Atlanta, Georgia. I haven't done one on the East Coast for more than 25 years, and probably won't be doing a whole lot of them in the future either. And so if you're on the East Coast or anywhere in the world really and want to go to a great 4-day intensive, you might want to choose November 4 to 7 in Atlanta, Georgia, and you'll find all the details on my website on my workshop tab at www.feelinggood.com. And there's also a 1-day workshop that you can attend from anywhere in the world, because you can come in person or attend online, on the 5 secrets of effective communication that we've been talking about in today's podcast. It's advanced empathy tools, and it's for connecting with difficult or challenging patients, colleagues, friends, and loved ones. That's October 6th, 2019, here in Palo Alto. Costs $135, and you get 7 continuing education credits if you're a mental health professional. And you can get all the details about that on my website, feelinggood.com. You can click for registration and information. I want to thank you, Dave, for being with us today. That made the podcast a lot cooler and a lot more awesome.
I am honored to be here, and I'm glad that it was helpful.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you to all our listeners, and until next time, we'll say bye now. This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes for this episode under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. The theme music is Gypsy Jazz in Paris, 1935, composed and performed by Brett Van Donsel. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.